The worst sales call that I think I ever made started with me talking for over 20 minutes straight. The best one, I talked for maybe 5 minutes total. I'm Randy Lovelace, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most powerful tools in entrepreneurship. That's leading with questions. Now, I know what you're thinking, Randy. I'm a nurse. I ask questions all the time. But there's a huge difference between asking questions to gather information and asking questions to lead, to influence, to inspire action. And once you master this skill, it's going to transform both how you lead your team and how you sell your services as a legal nurse. Now, let me tell you about that worst sales call that I mentioned. I was so excited about legal nurse consulting, so passionate about what we could offer to this attorney. And I spent the entire call explaining our services, our background, our processes, our pricing, everything. I was convinced that if I just gave him enough information, he'd obviously want to work with us. And I was convinced that, hey, this makes perfect sense. I'll tell him everything I can do, and he's gonna be like, wow, I can't believe how amazing you guys are. But I was wrong. And the call ended with him saying, well, that's interesting. Let me think about it. I'll call you if I need anything. And that's honestly just classic attorney speak for I'm never calling you back. So here's what I learned the hard way through that. When you lead with a monologue, you're essentially saying, let me tell you why I think that you should think like me. But when you lead with questions, you're saying, help me understand how you think so I can serve you better. And which approach do you think is going to build more trust? Now, before I go further, let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a conversation where someone asked you a really thoughtful question and suddenly you found yourself sharing things that you hadn't maybe planned to share? Maybe even coming to the realization that you're understanding things in a different way than you had before. That's the power of leading with questions. Questions don't really just gather information. If they're asked in the right way, they create connection. They demonstrate care and they help people to discover their own perceptions and their own needs. And here's the thing about entrepreneurship. Whether you're leading a team or you're selling to attorneys, your job isn't to have all the answers. That's a common misconception. Your job is to ask the right questions that's going to help other people find their answers. Now, let me give you an example of this from team leadership. Instead of me telling a subcontractor, you need to be more detailed in your chronology. What if I ask them, what do you think makes the difference between a chronology that attorneys are going to love and one that just gets the job done? You see the difference there? The first approach puts them on defense. The second approach gets them thinking and problem solving with you. And when you're scaling your legal nurse consulting business, and this is exactly what we teach in Catalyst, you're going to need to shift from doing all the work yourself to leading others to do the same sort of excellent work. But here's where most new business owners mess up. They think that leadership means having all the answers and telling people exactly what to do. And that's just not leadership. That's micromanagement. Real leadership is asking the tough questions that help your team members think at a higher level. One of my Catalyst clients, Rachel, she went from bedside nursing to managing 8 active subcontractors, and she did that in under a year. But early on, she was struggling with a subcontractor she was working with who kept missing important details in the medical records. And instead of her saying, you're missing things, Rachel learned to ask questions like, what's your process for ensuring you don't miss critical details when you're reviewing complex records? And that question led to a conversation where the subcontractor realized they needed a more systematic approach. And they came up with their own solution. Now that subcontractor is one of Rachel's most reliable team members. And more importantly, they feel ownership of their own improvement because they discovered the solution themselves. So here's what I've learned. When people discover insights through answering good questions, they implement those insights much more consistently than when they're just told to do it. Here's another example. Instead of telling a team member, you need to be faster, try asking something like, what do you think is slowing down your process and what might help you be more efficient? Again, the first approach feels like criticism. The second feels more like coaching. So now let's apply this same mentality to sales, because this is where leading with questions becomes absolutely critical for legal nurse consultants. Attorneys are smart people. They're used to being in control of conversations. They ask questions, and other people provide answers. So when you call them up and immediately start talking about your services, you're putting them in real unfamiliar and uncomfortable position. But when you lead with thoughtful questions, you're speaking their language. Instead of, I'd like to tell you about our legal nurse consulting services, try, what's been your experience working with medical experts on complex cases? What's been your experience with medical record analysis? And instead of, we provide chronologies and medical summaries, try something like, what's been the biggest challenge you face when you're trying to understand complex medical records? Instead of, our rates are competitive, try, what would make medical analysis truly valuable to you and your practice? You see what's happening here? You're not pushing information on them. You're inviting them to share their world with you. Now let me tell you about that best sales call that I mentioned at the beginning. I spent the first 20 minutes or so, instead of monologuing, asking questions about the attorney's practice, their biggest challenges, their ideal outcomes. And by the time I started explaining how we could help, I knew exactly what mattered most to him. And the result, he hired us. He gave us 3 cases before the call was over. But here's a beautiful thing. I didn't feel like I was selling, and he didn't feel like he was being sold to. It felt like 2 professionals having a strategic conversation about how to solve his problems. And that's exactly what it was. One of our Catalyst clients mastered this approach so well that she went from being laid off in her job to managing over 10 attorney clients in just a few months. She told me that her marketing conversations completely transformed when she stopped trying to convince attorneys to work with her and started helping them think through their needs. Now attorneys see her as a strategic partner, not just another vendor trying to get their business. And people are far more likely to believe and act on insights that they discovered themselves over insights that you tell them. Think about that. When was the last time someone convinced you to change your mind by arguing with you? Probably never, right? But when was the last time you changed your mind because you were asked a good question and came to a new realization? Probably more recently. This is why leading with questions is so powerful. You're not trying to change anyone's mind. You're helping them explore their own thinking and their own perspective. Let me ask you this. When someone makes a statement to you, what's your natural response? If you're like most people, you either agree, disagree, or tune out. But when someone asks you a thoughtful question, what happens? You start thinking, you engage, you participate in the conversation instead of just receiving information. And here's what I've learned after years of building businesses. Engagement always beats information dumping. When you tell an attorney we provide high quality chronologies, they might think, yeah, that's what they all say. But when you ask, what's the difference between a chronology that actually helps your case strategy and one that just summarizes the record? Then they start thinking about their own experiences and realizing what they really need. Questions create what I like to call productive thinking space. Instead of defending their current approach or politely listening to your pitch, they're actively considering new possibilities. And here's the really beautiful part of this. When they come to insights through answering your questions, they feel smart. They feel heard. They feel like you understand their world. And that's the foundation of trust. And trust is what leads to long-term business relationships. This is exactly why in our Catalyst program, we spend a significant amount of time teaching you and our other clients how to lead with questions. It's not just about creating great work products. It's about building great business relationships. And I'm going to teach you the specific questions to ask during case intake to help you understand what the attorney really needs. We'll show you how to lead team conversations that inspire excellence rather than just demanding it. And we'll give you frameworks for discovery conversations that attorneys will actually enjoy having. Because here's the thing. You can be the most technically skilled legal nurse consultant in the world, but if you can't connect with attorneys and lead effective conversations, you're going to struggle to build the business that you want. But when you master the art of leading with questions, everything changes. Attorneys start seeing you as a strategic partner. Your team members become more engaged and proactive. Your business conversations become more enjoyable and more profitable. So look, if you want to build a successful legal nurse consulting business, you need more than just medical expertise. You need entrepreneurial skill, including the ability to lead with questions in every important conversation you have. And that's exactly what we teach in Catalyst Coaching and Mentoring. We show you how to have discovery conversations that attorneys love, how to lead team members to do their best work, and how to build relationships that generate referrals and repeat business. So if you're ready to stop talking at people and start connecting with them, check out our free training where I break down the complete framework for building a successful legal nurse consulting business. That link is in the description below. Guys, I appreciate you watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.